Hi, today I'm going to talk to you about some Linux distros for beginners. This is Shalon OS. It does have a live CD, which means that you can check it out before you install it to your hard drive. Before this actually boots up, I'm going to install my girlfriend's D-Link stick because she has a USB Wi-Fi stick. Now, the Linux versions I'm going to be talking about, I will finish this video tomorrow. Tonight is Friday. It's already at 8:16. I'm using my girlfriend's computer. She gets off at work like 9. So, and since I only have right now 3 flash drives I can work with, I actually have 4. One has Linux Mint on it, already pre-installed. So, these actually have different operating systems than Mint. Alright. I'm not even worried about this. This says incomplete language. I'm going to close that. Alright, Wi-Fi networks available. It's a nice looking operating system. Let's connect to Wi-Fi. So it does pick up her D-Link card. I just had to make sure I plugged it in before the OS started. Now to actually get into where you need to go to find games and things like that, it's called the Application Center. Alright, it is different than like Zorn, Mint, Ubuntu. Now this is a Ubuntu based distro. It will take you to the software center, but to start it you have to hit Application Center. Okay, you see a bunch of stuff that's here that's checked. That stuff's already installed. Alright, I'm not even going to go through all this. I just want you to see how easy it is to actually update and install things. As you can see, there's not a lot of games installed, but you can install more games. Has internet, Firefox, radio player, audio downloader, video downloader, qubit torrent, multimedia. It has a bunch of stuff under there. Now, like I said, I want to show you the most user-friendly operating systems. And up here it says install. Now, I did create all of these with Etcher. Now, I'm going to shut this one down. And like I said, I have actually 4 USBs. It says remove installation. Now I'm going to remove her Wi-Fi stick too. Press enter and it'll shut down. Now the next OS, what I'll do is I'm going to stop the camera and I'll come back for this one. That way all these videos will be separate. Okay, I have the next one installed. Now I'm going to plug her USB Wi-Fi stick in, and we're going to let this start. The reason I'm making this Linux for beginners, Microsoft said they will no longer support Windows 7 after January 2020. Period. That means no security updates, no nothing. They said they will provide more like a subscription service to employers with Windows 7, but not home users. So anybody that has Windows 7, Vista, XP, still running those operating systems, well, after January of next year, okay, pick the Wi-Fi card up, Wi-Fi stick, you're pretty much out of luck. Unless you go to upgrade completely, buy a new computer, or just whatever. And I would like for somebody to, and right here it says try, we are going to try this. I would like for people to know if you already have Windows, you do not have to overwrite this on a lot of these operating systems. It will install next to Windows. Alright, up here, I have to use the network menu to connect to Wi-Fi, and that's right there. Now you can see this is an entirely looking different operating system. The bar is on the top. I hope you can see all this. Not too far. There we go. I do not like operating systems that look like this, but this is a real easy operating system, but you know, it doesn't really have a way to update stuff. You can go to the App Center. That will actually send you to where you can add things to this operating system. Let's see if she loads up. It should. The Wi-Fi is working. There we go. And this is more of an app-based operating system, which personally I do really hate. The only thing they have on here right now is Steam, but if I backed it up or went home and then came back, see it's updating. I don't know if you see that or not. There will be a list of games here that you can install. So, see it says 9 updates available for your system. I don't want to update it. I'll go home, then back to games. If it doesn't show you a list of games, click down on the updates, and that will bring a list up for this. But like I said, I don't like the way this one looks a whole lot. I don't like using this one. It runs okay. It looks nice, but you know, to me, I prefer something a little more Windows type looking, or something that's a little more familiar. But this is definitely a beginner operating system. Alright, I'm just going to close this. I don't want to update anything. I'm going to disconnect this. And if you go, this is Elementary OS. So just in case you didn't know. Alright, and like I say, to turn it off you have to go to the top and shut down, and then this will pop up, shut down. Okay, like I say, I mean, that's elementary. That's once again a beginner operating system. Alright, I'm gonna shut this down. I'll put another stick in and I'll come back. Okay, here we go. Here's another one. I know it looks about like the last one, but this is not like the last one. Like I said, the reason I'm doing this, I'm making a list of Linux distros for beginners. If you're an advanced user, you know how to use Arch and all these other distros. This is for a person that needs a new operating system, or an operating system outside of the Windows. Like I said, Microsoft's going to be ending support. Now this is Ubuntu. Personally, I don't like Ubuntu. A lot of stuff is based off of it. Linux Mint. You can add Ubuntu, Zorin stuff. You can add, you know, from the Ubuntu downloads. I just don't like the way this looks. I really don't. You may. That's your decision. That's your choice. Now make sure any Linux you try has the live CD, so you can check to make sure your hardware works. And I actually should have plugged that in right there before I hit try Ubuntu. I plugged her Wi-Fi stick in. Because yeah, I don't want to install any of this stuff. And you'll see a bunch of words up here, but like I said, I plugged her stick in. I want to make sure it picks up. It says install. See, everything's on the side over here. I really don't like that. The toolbar is at the top. I don't like that either. So, but this is, once again, this is another one of those operating systems that if you are a home user, you can use. Down here it says show apps or applications. There's a lot of stuff already installed, but I prefer something like Linux Mint. This is the newest Ubuntu. So, and like I said, to install stuff on Ubuntu, it's Ubuntu software update or something like that. I believe it's Ubuntu software. Like I said, I really don't care for Ubuntu a whole lot. It looks decent. It's just, yeah, it's the software updater. Like I said, I'm not going to take any of these really online or anything like that. But these are some of the ones for beginners. So, alright. Wi-Fi up here is not connected. Wi-Fi settings. And right here's the Wi-Fi. I mean, you have to go up here, click Wi-Fi settings, and I could go online and take this, by typing in my Wi-Fi password, take this to the software updater, or the Ubuntu software, and I can get games and things like that. So anyway, I'm not going to do that. My Wi-Fi is here on this list, so I can connect to it even with the stick. Alright, now I'm going to turn this off. And like I say, all these are going to be Linux for beginners and only for beginners. So I have to overwrite these sticks, and then I will come back and finish this video tomorrow. Like I said, it's already 8:30 at night, and I have to replace batteries in this camera again. I've already done it twice, but it's just chewing batteries up. So I have to replace them again, and I will be back tomorrow and show you some more Linux versions for beginners. Alright. Alright, this is Manjaro. Language US. English, yes. English, US, yes. Manjaro to me is a royal pain. So we're just going to go down to boot. Manjaro, I do not want to set this up. I'm going to go down to boot. Any Linux that, like I say, does not let you try it and it just wants to install it, you don't want that. You want to try these and make sure they pick up your hardware, make sure that they work. Plug that in. So basically, to get Manjaro to start, you actually have to go down to like boot, and it'll boot it up. Don't worry about language files, all this other junk. This has a different type of file system than some other Linux versions. It doesn't have as big as repositories than some of the other Linux versions, but it is pretty user friendly. I mean, it doesn't look as nice as some of the other versions. Let's close that. And here's the wireless right here. So it will pick up the wireless. And like I said, I'm not going to update any of this stuff because, well, I do not have any more batteries. for this camera. This does come with Firefox. It has extensions. This is a Cinnamon type desktop, which I prefer Cinnamon over other things. It has all kinds of stuff. I mean, all kinds of office stuff and settings. There's a software updater. I prefer other types of Linux to this one. Here's add remove software that's on this system. So it's really kind of hard to actually find some things for this. You can go online and update software and things like that. Here's system settings. Up here, there's Firefox. Manjaro comes basically with the command line, the terminal. Yes, you can set it up and use it as is, but I prefer things where it's easier to download software and games to install. Like I said, I mean, if you want to learn Linux, this is a good one to learn with. It's still considered for beginners, but there are other versions that to me are more user friendly than this. Okay, now I'm gonna unhook this. Well, like I say, it's a nice smooth operating system, and they consider this for beginners. Personally, if I were a beginner, I would go with Mint, Ubuntu, something that has a package manager, downloader, something that's so much easier to use. Okay, let's get the next one in, and I'll be back when that one starts. Alright, I'm back. It's the next morning. It's 8:51 a.m. This is Zorn OS. Remember, this is my list on Linux versions for beginners, Linux distros for beginners. Zorn OS has a theme changer. You can make it look like Windows 7, Windows XP, different types of Windows. This is their latest version, which is, I believe, 12.1. Now, we're going to go to try, but before I do that, I'm going to plug in, of course, my girlfriend's Wi-Fi stick. The one thing you want to do with Linux is, if you have hardware, like plug and play, when you try your Linux version, plug everything in. You want to make sure it picks everything up, so you know if you install this, your hardware is going to work. All your external hardware, like your USB devices, like the D-Link that my girlfriend has for her desktop here, which is her Wi-Fi. Game controllers. Linux usually picks up game controllers pretty well, but if you have like a high dollar game controller, plug it in, make sure it picks it up. Printers, things like that, things that are external from the internal hardware, plug it in and make sure everything works. Now Zorn, to update it, I'm not going to update this. I have no more battery, so I have to get through these pretty quickly. You go here, you have all this stuff installed. Here's software right here. You have games here, accessories here. There's a lot of things you can do with Zorn. It looks really nice, but to me, when they update Zorn, see here you have the software and updates. You have software, download software, and basically you click on that, it'll take you to the Ubuntu download center. Alright, and here's Zorn appearance. You can change the appearance of Zorn. Alright, now I'm going to shut this off. Power off. remove, and hit enter, and I'll be back with the next one. Okay, in the last video I talked about Zorin OS. To me, Zorin OS is actually one of the heaviest versions of Linux on this list. Zorin actually does still have bugs. I would not recommend Zorin. Is it easy to use? Yes. Does it have problems? Yes. Now this is one of the lightest distros that you can actually install as an operating system. Now I understand there are extreme light Linux versions such as Puppy Linux, Damn Small Linux. The problem with those are they're not really user friendly, and it takes a lot of knowledge, and it's hard to get them set up on a USB flash drive. And I should have plugged this in before I started this. Oh well. You go, well, this is just Linux Mint. Yes and no. Alright, this is Linux Mint Mate. Alright, I plugged that in, it picked it up. Linux Mint Mate is a smaller, lighter version of Linux Mint. As you can tell, it does not have a lot of stuff on here already pre-installed, but it does have a software manager. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and connect, because this is a lightweight version of Linux Mint. This will run on 256 megs of RAM. Alright, for a Linux distro, most Linux versions run with very low RAM. This is one of them. So if you have an old system with like Windows XP and you would like Linux, then this is one of the best choices for you when you have an older system that came with like XP, something like that, with low RAM. If you have under a gig of RAM, this is probably the system as far as the OS you want to use, and this is Linux Mint Mate. The next one I will show you is the one I do prefer. I do have 4 gigs of RAM. The next Linux will run on like a gig of RAM, something like that. It's Linux Mint Cinnamon, and they look pretty much the same when they start up. But you can see the software manager comes up. You can install all the Linux games, all the game emulators. You can install Steam on this. So this is just a lighter version of the Linux Mint that I prefer. And like I say, this will run on 256 gigs of RAM. Alright, to update it, you go to Menu, and then Software Manager. To install things, it has Firefox installed. It has a music player, rhythm box, package manager. You can upgrade your packages for Linux. Control Center configures your system. And just like any other version of Linux, make sure all your hardware is plugged in. Now this, of course, I forgot to plug the D-Link card stick in, and it picked it up even after the OS started. So this is a really good version. This is one of the easiest versions to use. Everything's right here. You go to the menu on the bottom, pretty much like Windows Start menu, but it says LM menu, and everything is right here. You have your favorites, you have all applications here, and that brings up a list of everything that's installed. This does not have pretty much any games installed on this. You will have to install them, but they are real easy to install. You just hit Software Manager, click on Games, and then install the games you want. Alright, like I said, this is one of the lightest versions, easiest versions to use for beginners, and it looks a lot more like Windows on the bottom. Alright, I will come back with the last version. Alright, I'm back. Now this is Linux Mint Cinnamon. This is the one I do prefer. It runs smooth. I've never had a problem with it. It does take a little bit more resources to run Cinnamon than it does Mate. Uh, but if you have a computer with 1 gig of RAM, this will run smoothly. This will definitely install next to a Windows operating system. Like I said, if you already have Windows, you don't want to get rid of it. You want to install Linux next to it. Most versions of Linux, not all, but most, will install next to your Windows version. Once again, in this list, this is a list for beginners. This is not a list for advanced. This is a list for people just trying to get into Linux. And of course, it looks pretty much the same as Mate, pretty much, but not quite. And of course, it will pick up the Wi-Fi. And it's connected. And like I say, this, as you can tell, this is totally different. If I go to the menu bar down here, this looks different. It's totally different. To get to your application manager, just go to this first list right here. Firefox is on the very top, and right here is your software manager. Right there, click on that, and it will bring up your list of things that can be installed. Now, when you're trying Linux, you do not install things, okay? That is just when it is installed on your hard drive. But we go to games, and here's the list of games that you can install, games and emulators. Like I said, you can install Steam, you can install all kinds of things on here. Linux is not made to run Windows. Regardless of what people say, yes, you can install Linux, install a virtual machine, or use VirtualBox and install Windows in Linux. But when you do that, you have to have a very high-end system, high-end computer, because it draws so much resources to run a virtual machine. And when you're running an operating system in virtual machine, unless you have a high-end machine, then don't waste your time. And it's confusing. It's hard to set up. But as far as the versions that I prefer, I myself prefer Linux Mint. It will install next to Windows. It will make a dual boot for your hard drive. You don't have to do any of that. When you start to install it, it'll ask you if you want to install it next to Windows. Just click yes. It will install next to it. It'll split your drive in half. You can actually choose how much room you want Linux to have, actually. So if you have a 60 gig hard drive and you want Windows on 40 gigs and Linux on 20 gigs, you can do that. But I'm doing this because Microsoft is ending support for Windows 7 in January of 2020. So there are going to be a lot of people stuck the same way that Microsoft did with XP, Vista. They just ended support. And when they did that, a lot of companies stopped carrying device drivers for these machines. So you need something to go online with. You need something you can go to YouTube, go to Facebook, do other things once Microsoft ends support for Windows 7. And they're going to stop ending support for Windows like 8 and 8.1. I think they already ended support for 8, but 8.1 in like 2024 or something like that. So, my advice, if you have Windows, keep Windows, install Linux next to it. Choose one of these if you're a beginner. I would not personally install Zorin. Like I say, it is a heavy operating system. It looks nice, but Zorin is a very heavy operating system, and I have found that Zorin does have some bugs. But, that's up to you. My personal choice for a low-end PC, low-end laptop, you know, with only 256 megs of RAM, up to 2 gigs, I would go with Linux Mint Mate. And if you have 2 to 4 gigs of RAM, I would go with Linux Mint Cinnamon. That's what this one is right now. It's Cinnamon. It looks nice. It works. It works right out of the box. You can, when you install it, go online and it will update anything you need while you're installing Linux. If you have Wi-Fi or a connection you can connect to. So make sure all your devices are plugged in when you're installing any version of Linux. And like I said, it's so easy to update this. It's so easy to get software and programs. This is my list of the best Linux distros for beginners. Once again, this is for beginners. If you are a person that does know Linux, then most of these you won't mess with. And like I said, I spent quite a bit of time yesterday, today, installing all these distros on USB so you could see them. You are more than welcome to pick and choose whichever version of Linux you want. I myself prefer Mint Cinnamon, but I also have 4 gigs of RAM and a Core 2 Duo laptop. If you have anything below that, you can check into, like I say, Puppy Linux that runs off USB, Damn Small Linux. If you just need something to go online with, the only problem is those are hard to set up, they're hard to get on USB, and they're just hard to use all around. These are the only Linux versions that I have found that are actually extremely user-friendly. And I will spend all day, you know, pretty much recovering all my flash drives because I wanted to go through this so you didn't have to. When it comes to Linux, there's no right choice, there's no wrong choice. Well, I mean, actually there is wrong choices. It depends on your hardware, it depends on how much RAM you have in your computer and what you have hooked up to it. But once again, I'm doing this because there are going to be a lot of people stuck in January of 2020 when all Windows 7 support gets just, you know, it's gone. My point, if you have Windows 7, if you have Windows XP, if you have Windows Vista, install Linux next to it. Do not overwrite your hard drive, because when you make a dual boot system, it will start whatever operating system it needs to start, and that operating system can use all your system resources to run it. Not just part, but all. So if you're running Linux, it will run all your system resources. If you boot into Windows, it will run all your system resources, not just a small part of it. That way you can play all your Windows games. You can, you know, still use your flash drives. You can still use your external hard drives. You can still use all your Windows programs. And you won't have to worry about Windows crashing your system because, well, Windows will not be going online. That's why you will have Linux. Alright, this is the end of this video. I apologize for the length. My camera is eating batteries, numerous batteries, just making this video. I hope there's no clicking in the background. If there is, I apologize. It is the video camera. I hope the quality is alright. But once again, this is a list of Linux for beginners. Personally, if you are a beginner, I'm sure you've seen like Zorin OS. People have talked about it. Zorin OS is heavy on resources. It is also a little bit buggy, and you have to go online and look for fixes for some of that. The lightest Linux I've shown you is Linux Mint Mate, and it works very well on older hardware. Alright, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're not too bored with it. and I'll just have to think of something else to come up with and post me another video. Maybe next video will be a midnight video. But everyone have a good day. Okay, before I end the video, well, I said I was going to end the video, but I wanted to talk to you a minute about what do you do if you have a 32-bit machine. Everything I have is 64-bit. Now, there are versions of Linux Mint that are still 32-bit. Now, I typed in Linux Mint Mate. Now, I'm going to go down to Linux Mint right there. This will come up. And new features, Linux Mint Mate 19 Mate. I'm just going to go download real quick. Well, I'm going to click on here. And I'm going to go downloads right here. So you still can download 32-bit for Linux Mint Cinnamon and Mate. Mate to me is a little bit lighter. There is a difference between Cinnamon and Mate. Let's see. You can see all kinds of stuff for Linux Mint Cinnamon, but what I may do is I may just go ahead and download a 32-bit Mate, and I will download the Cinnamon desktop. Personally, I prefer the Cinnamon desktop, and show you that you still can use a 32-bit operating system for those of you that have 32-bit. And well, you know what, I'll download Mate. I do have the 64-bit. Now, Mate is 1.9 gigs for the 32-bit. That's actually pretty big. I would use no less than a 4 gig flash drive. There are Linux Mint that will install on a 2 gig flash drive, but that's really stretching it. So you really need a 4 gig flash drive. I usually download from Linux Freedom right here, and you can see it's downloading, and this will be the 32-bit. So you know that if you have a 32-bit machine, you still can use your like Windows XP, Windows Vista, Windows 7 that's 32-bit, and have Linux, and you still have a 32-bit. Most Linux 32 bits I have found will still go online, will still go to YouTube and things like that. So I wanted you to know that you can still get 32-bit operating systems. And the reason I'm getting Mate is it is lighter on resources, and it's going to take me 50 minutes, something like that, to download, hour, you know, give or take, because, well, at the same time, I'm actually, you know, wiping the flash drive here. So if you have a 32-bit OS, you still can get 32-bit operating systems. And I will go ahead, and once I get this drive wiped, I'll install this operating system on here. It'll be 32-bit, and I'll show you that it will still work. Alright, I will be back, and I was getting in the video, but I figured I'd let you know 32-bit operating systems are still out there. Alright, when this gets done, I'll install it on the flash, and I'll come back. Okay, as you can see, I have Linux Mint Mate 32-bit. Now, this is 2.2 gigabytes, so it's a little bit too big to fit on a 2 gig hard drive. I do have a 4 gig. I said I would replace this with that flash drive. There's the one I just got done with, restoring my drive. Once this is done creating, I'll come back and I'll talk to you about the 32-bit operating system for Linux. If you have a 32-bit machine, that's what you need. Some machines that came with 32-bit will run a 64-bit. The compact Presario that I have in my videos, I no longer own it. I did donate it to a family that needed a laptop, and it had a 32-bit OS, but it was capable of running 64-bit, and I installed a new hard drive, new operating system. The whole works for them. So I no longer have that, or I would demonstrate on that one. But I will demonstrate on my girlfriend's desktop. It's a 64-bit Core 2 Duo, Dell Optiplex. My laptop is a Dell E6500 Core 2 Duo. So both of these will run 64-bit. But if you don't have a 64-bit machine, you have to use the 32-bit OS. Linux still does have them. When this is done, I will come back and I will start the video where I'm showing you how to use the 32-bit. Alright, I will be back when this is done. Okay, I'm back. This is Linux Mint Mate 32-bit. Don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking Windows. What I'm doing is showing you alternatives. If you have an older system or older computer, then you need to actually upgrade the operating system. The one thing I hate about Microsoft, anything Microsoft, Microsoft does not support their own product. If you purchased XP, you can't get support for it. Vista, you can't get support for it. Windows 7, let me plug that in. Windows 7, the support will be ending in January 2020. So, what are you going to do? What are you going to do if you have an older laptop? Well, you don't have much choice to either just keep buying Microsoft stuff, which I do not like Microsoft. I believe if you sell a product, you should support that product. You should not force upgrades on people. You should not force them to buy a new computer. You should support the product you sold. Okay? A lot of people right now are just so happy with Windows 10. They're not going to be. Microsoft has already come out and said they're going to make it a pay feature for you to use Windows 10. That is why they gave that operating system away, because they're going to start charging you a monthly fee to use it. They've already said that, they just haven't done it yet. So, for those people that have Windows 10, I'm happy for you, but you may not be happy real soon. Another thing I like about Linux, and I'll get to that in just a few seconds, hopefully. I'm going to do a search for YouTube. Just go here. I just want to start something because this is the 32-bit operating system. A lot of places will not use a 32-bit operating system on Windows. It will not pick up. I just want to, start something. I don't care what it is. And remember, this is the 32-bit. I do have the speakers off, so if you don't hear sound, it's fine. I don't have the speakers on. But you can see YouTube works just fine on the 32-bit OS. I'm going to get to this quickly because, well, the batteries on this are dying again. I do not have a battery tester, so I can't test to see what batteries are the best. I just have to keep swapping them out. If you already have Windows and your Windows crashes, what are you going to do? You use Linux. Alright, what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug this one in right here. And there's a reason. If your Windows crashes, how do you get your stuff off Windows? Alright, make sure that went in, and it didn't, of course. It slipped up. Okay, right there. Alright, it just slipped up. Linux sees Windows. Alright? Windows doesn't see Linux. So, to get into your Windows, you have to go... Remember, this is Mate 32-bit. Go over here to start menu, go to my, computer. This actually has my girlfriend's hard drive on it. She has a 750 gig and a 320 gig installed. I'm going to go to users, her, and then I can just go to her documents. There's a reason I'm doing this. Let's go to her pictures, and right here is the media, the 8.1. Now I'm just going to, she has some bookmarks, some pictures. I can actually copy to, or just hit copy. I'm just going to hit copy. I'm going to open the 8 gig, and I'm going to hit paste, and there it is. I just saved her pictures or whatever off of Windows if it crashes. The only way this will not work is if you have a 100% complete hard drive crash. Alright, now to eject these, you right click and hit unmount. Always make sure you unmount things, and then hit eject for the flash drive. Now it's safe to remove the drive. Now if I plug this in, that picture will be on there. But as you see, it does go online 32-bit. It will work. It does pick up Windows programs, as far as what you have on your Windows hard drive if it crashes. That is why I always have one flash drive installed with Linux Mint or some form of Linux, because it will see into Windows if Windows crashes, if Windows won't start. This is actually this is Linux Mint 19.1 Tessa. This is a mate. This is not the cinnamon. Me personally, I like the way cinnamon looks, but this is mate, so it looks more like the Windows XP setup. And if you go to all applications, right here is a list of everything basically installed and what you can use. So it's real easy to use, and you have favorites right here. Alright, that's it for this. And like I said, I wanted to show you a 32-bit Linux. 32-bit still does work. And if you need a new operating system, or you want to try something different and you have a 32-bit OS, try this one. These are the easiest Linux for beginners. Alright, that's it for this list. I hope this helps you out, and everyone have a good day.